Hi everyone. Welcome to today's Learn Live session, extending functionality of Azure Cosmos DB.
And I am Rick Hygas. I'm a senior cloud solution architect with Microsoft. And Harry will introduce himself. Go ahead, Harry.
Hey guys, this is Hari, Sri Harindra. Nice to meet you all. I'm a cloud solution architect. Thanks, Rick, for the introduction. And let's not waste time. Let's jump into today's session. And say hi to our moderator, Geraldine. Hi,
Hi, Gerald.
Geraldine.
Thanks for being out there for us.
Yeah. And she'll be handling the chat. Any questions? Always shoot to Geraldine. She can handle anything.
That's right.
Again, today's Learn Live session, the activities, the link for today's session. Feel free to get access that link. Let's ask Geraldine to paste that in the chat. Okay, let's give it a minute. All right. Let's go to the next slide. Again, this is a very interactive session, live session, and Rick and we are here happy to help. Any questions that come across, feel free to shoot it in the chat, or I can take a few of them on it. And today's learning objectives. So we will be trying to install different extensions whichever are available on Cosmos DB for Postgres, and we'll try to extend those functionalities with the database extensions. And Rick, over to you, man.
All right. Yes. So basically, again, what we're doing today is we're learning more about Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL, which is our fully managed database offering that offers the full functionality of PostgreSQL and the ability to distribute data across multiple servers in a cluster. So that's the product that we're focusing on here today. Next slide, please. And I'm here. Anyway, from a 30,000 foot view, we are going to be looking at Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL, and we're going to look at three extensions. Primarily the Citus extension, which we'll go more into what that is, the PostGIS extension, and also the PG cron extension. And what we'd like to do with these live modules, and we basically start going through the learn module right here on during the broadcast here, and we're going to talk about the scenario. We always start off our learn live modules with a scenario. So go into the next slide, please, Harry. And so our scenario here is Harry and we're consultants, and we're working with our customer, who is Woodgrove Bank. And they recently had a new payment app come out, and it's been very successful. And all these transactions are hitting their PostgreSQL server that is currently on-prem. And they also have an analytical workload on top of this PostgreSQL server that's on-prem, and it is impacting the performance of that. And so they're looking for some advice, some help. And so what we're planning to do is we're going to talk to them about maybe migrating that workload into Azure, and also talking about, hey, by the way, some additional information might be helpful here, such as the geographic location of where people are using the payment app. And also they will also want the ability to load data on a regular basis, on a periodic basis. So we're going to talk about how Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL can leverage extensions in order to make all of this happen. And one of the cool things that we talk about is the PostGIS extension, adding that geospatial piece of data to it. And Harry, I think you want to say a little more about the geospatial data piece, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the cool things about these extension or today's use case is extensions are not specific or not pigeonholed to any one particular industry. As an example, we are taking a look at the GIS extension, where it's a very really powerful extension where you can actually handle geometric data, the map data, and this is highly standard and compliant across the world. And it is one of the de facto standards in the open source GIS world, especially when you try to handle map data, location data, and when you try to bring those parameters in, which are very specific in a very specific format. This extension is very useful. This is just an example to say, hey, we are not pigeonholing for just with scenario with a retail or a government sector. This can be, as an example, we can extend this functionalities to different sectors. We can pick and choose which one you want to use for.
Yeah, exactly. This is not just for financial retail stuff, but like in the vertical that I'm in here at Microsoft, which is the U.S. manufacturing vertical, you can use geospatial data, PostGIS data sets to help with supply chain issues for just-in-time processing. Where are my delivery trucks at? Stuff like that is so there's many use cases for this extension and many others. So although we're talking about Woodgrove Bank here in this scenario for this Learn Live module, we can use this all over the place. So let's go on. All right. So one of the things that when we're talking with Woodgrove Bank about their issues is saying, hey, we need to be able to handle all these transactions and be able to have that analytical little workload on top of it. So what we're going to propose is for them to migrate from their on-premises PostgreSQL server into an Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL database. And one of the nice things about this is the foundation of it is a multi-node distributed database model. So it is really cool. Let's go on to the next slide, talk a little bit more about what extensions are, right? So an extension in Postgres is a package that bundles related objects and can really extend the functionality or even bring new features to the database. So it's lots of examples here, such as data types, functions, foreign data wrappers, other indexes, and a lot of different things you can do with this. And one of the key things we want to make sure you understand here is the foundation of Azure Cosmos Database for PostgreSQL is based on the Citus data extension. So just by default of using this offering, you're using an extension for Postgres. Next slide, please.
Yeah, amazing point to that, Rick. So again, one of the things you can ask is, why do we need extensions? Like, what is the point of extensions, Rick? If you have anything on that before we go to the next slide.
Yeah, it's really to make things easier for you, right? Or provide a different way of accessing data, or from a different server with foreign data wrappers. So it's really about if you don't have the extension that's just part of the PostgreSQL, offering, then there's the extensions from the community as well that can help you.
Yeah, it helps. It saves the lives of developers rather than reinventing the wheel. You can use existing extensions to make it much easier.
Exactly. And Citus was actually a company that Microsoft purchased a few years back. But the offering, the Citus data extension, is an open source extension. So it's out there for the community to use as well. And it provides a lot of performance and scalability features for our offering. And as you see in this little graphic here, we have one big node in the middle, the coordinator node, and then a bunch of worker nodes beside it. And that's part of the Citus extension is the distributed database engine. The way you can shard data into distributed tables and also have reference tables that can exist on every node. So it is quite a feat, really, when you think about what it can do. We can dive deeper on this and really each one of those nodes is actually a PostgreSQL server. It's running the Citus extension, and we have, like I said, one node that's a coordinator node that distributes out the work breaking up a big problem into smaller problems, distributing those out to the worker nodes. And it lets you really create these distributed tables, having the data spread out across all of them. And the real power of this is basically having that parallelized query execution. Again, breaking the big problem down into smaller chunks so that you can solve it quicker, faster, easier. The coordinator node takes those results, combines it back in, and sends it back to the client who is who made the request of the query in the first place. So it's really great for SaaS applications, real-time analytics, time series workloads. It's really great for a lot of different things, including our scenario here with Woodgrove Bank. Yeah, and I talked about the parallelized query execution, and there was a graphic there, and I don't know if it's displaying. I think you went one slide too many. There you go. So we can get that back there. And it's not showing up on my screen, but basically it's a graphic that's showing how the application is sending a query to the coordinator node sends the work to the worker nodes send the results back, and it combines that result set and sends it back to the application. So it is I really like this graphic a lot. It helps you visualize what's really going on underneath the covers. And that's the other thing about this is that with this extension, with our offering, you don't really worry about all the communication that's going on underneath the covers. That is done for you, but you do have to know how to build the distributed tables and the reference tables and things of that nature. And I think that's what we're going to do next, right, Harry?
Yeah, I think I have a question from one of the users. So he wants to know if it's a completely cloud-based solution or a hybrid solution.
So for Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL, it is a completely cloud solution.
That's good. And before we jump into today's exercise, feel free to post any questions in the comment. And I hope everyone has access to their instance. And if not, let's go over, has access to Azure Cloud. And you should be able to access the Learn Live module. The link is placed during the start of the chat, but let me see if anyone still doesn't have access to that. Yeah, you can see in that scroll bar below, you have the Learn Live module there. You can just use that. You should be able to see that module like this. And one of the part is the exercise. So this is the exercise which we will be handling today. I hope everyone has access to this. And let's go to the exercise. So as part of the exercise, here we are going to create an Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL database. And using that, we are going to create some tables, create a distributed table, and then actually add some data and distribute that. Let me zoom in a little bit. I hope everyone can see my screen. All right.
That looks better for me.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, I'm here to help.
All right. So step one. Let's see. So as you go to the Azure home portal, portal.azure.com, this is how your screen is going to look. And we are going to take a look at how do we create databases. You can type in databases here, or you can search from the menu. If you go there, you should be able to see databases. And once you have that, you can either hit that or you can go to that. I have it on top of my services. Select Azure Cosmos DB. Again, you can choose databases, or you can just type in Cosmos DB. Again, these are different ways to go to any particular service.
Yeah.
Once, I'm sorry, got Rick?
Yeah, just to call out, this is Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL that we're dealing with. There's another offering called Flexible Postgres Server, Azure SQL database for Postgres Server flexible option. That is not being demoed here. We're talking about Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL. Just want to make sure we're picking the right thing.
Absolutely. So you can see the different, the other offering, the one Rick was talking about, Azure Database for PostgreSQL servers. This is the one which we are not taking a look at today. We are taking a look at the distributor database, the one with the Citus extension. I know a lot of mouthful names, but think of it this way. This is the one which has the distributed Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. The other one is going to be a single node database. That's the flexible server. Now, once we have that, now let's select the option to create a database. Hit the create option here. It should give you a nice tab which API best suits for your workload. And for today's Line Live session, we are going to choose this. This is again for fully managed Cosmos DB for Postgres offering, which is on cloud. This is the database you choose for distributed workloads, the workloads which require a huge amount of data processing capabilities, parallel processing capabilities, which come with the rich geospatial and indexing capabilities. Let's hit create. And you should be able to see the subscription, the resource group, the cluster name, and you can just choose to learn the cluster name. Here is going to be based on today's lab. It should be going to be a unique name from the lab, Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. And we can choose the region, and this is where we select the scale. For today's lab, we need to make sure we have 2 nodes, one coordinator node and one worker node for today's lab.
But I could just start off with one node.
Yes.
And not for this lab, but otherwise I could just start with one node, correct?
Absolutely. So if you are new to what's a distributed database, if you're not sure, you can just say start with a single node. Single node is basically a PostgreSQL server. And you can later extend it to multiple nodes. Yes, to your question.
Oh,
And
cool.
compute per node, you choose the number of cores needed. So we'll just go with the basic option for today. And once we have that, you can also go for the availability zones, no preference today. And for today's session, we are not going to enable high availability and automatic failover. Those are out of scope for today's exercise. And once we have that, we save that information and we go to the next tab. That's going to be networking. And for today's session, we are going to set it up to public access. And we allow, make sure you set this, allow public access from all the resources inside this cluster so that we can access this from Azure portal. Make sure you check this button. Once you have that, you can skip the preview, you can skip the tags, and then once you hit the review and create, you can create this. I have already created it, but it should take you guys some time to go get access to this instance. So once you have this, you should be able to see it under Azure Cosmos DB tabs, the database you created.
So about how long does it take to spin up?
It should be pretty quick. You should be able to see it in 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Just want to set expectations for everybody.
Yes. Again, it might take some time to provision based on the availability in that particular region. Again, once you guys have it, we can proceed to the next steps. How do you connect? Now, how do you actually connect to this database and how do you start using the database? And I will give you guys a minute or so before we proceed to the next step. And any questions, feel free to shoot it in the comments. Let's give it a minute before we jump to the next section in the exercise.
Okay, I do not see any questions in the live stream, so I think we're good to move on from a question point of view.
Okay. I just wanted a minute so that everyone has time to access their data and create the database.
Sure. Okay, let's yeah. If they're watching this on a replay, of course they can pause it.
Oh yeah, they can. Yes, let's do. Let's recommend them to go on and let's go to the connection strings. Again, You should be able to see how you can connect from in URL standpoint, PSQL from JDBC that, and if you are trying to connect it from any application. I know mines are blacked out, but you should be able to see them on the screen. And you can try to connect from any of these. Like if you guys are using just PG admin, that's good and go. You can just connect it from PG admin too. And for today's session, we are going to connect it from Cloud Shell. So there's a small icon there. Let's just hit the Cloud Shell option. And it would ask you to, if there's storage into, if there is no storage mounted, you can actually create a storage so that this shell has access to a storage. And once you have that, now you can connect to the database. Again, you can see the connection strings here, and you can just copy the PSQL connection string and then paste it in the chat, and make sure you replace the username and password. Let me type in my password. There you go. I am connected. I am in the database. Now let's check how many nodes are there in my current database. And the command for that, is going to be select star from distributed nodes. Let me extend this to a bigger, wider screen. You can see the node ID and the records for that.
Okay, cool.
You should be able to see the node, second node. Here, the node is going to be the actual primary. The next one is going to be the worker nodes. We had 2 worker nodes created today for today's lab. Once we have that, we also need to make sure the networking is set so that you can access the worker nodes too. Once you go back to your instance, and in the networking tab here, you should be able to make sure you enable the access to the worker nodes so that you can access the worker nodes. All right. Now that we have seen all the databases, all the worker nodes and databases we created, let's go to the next step. Okay, let's clear this a bit. Let's just add this for now. Okay, let's go to adding. So for today's session, we are going to add 2 tables, one for payment users and one for payment events for the Woodgrow Bank. Let's just paste those and hit enter. So you can see both the create table options there for payment users and payment events. And these have, you can see the fields in these particular tables, the primary key being the user ID for payment users, and for payment events, we don't have, we have a primary key, and it's a compound key, which is made from event ID and user ID. Now, the next part, how are these 2 tables related? You can see the user ID is going to be acting as a foreign key. So now we are going to create distributed tables, because these are going to be the tables with the actual distribution. So these are the tables you need to have more compute power or more. So most of your queries, most of your application for Woodgrow Bank is going to be based on their users and their events. So that's going to be the biggest possible table. And Rick, your point?
Yes. I was going to say, so does it matter what you choose as a distribution column?
Yes, absolutely. Both the payment events and user tables were assigned the same distribution. Once we actually distribute the table, it's going to be probably the user ID. So you need to choose the distribution column based on how the table is going to be divided. In this case, you need to specify which column you are going to use to shard. Based on the shard ID, you actually do the distribution. So choosing the distribution column is one of the biggest or the most important step in when you are creating a distributed table.
Okay. And are you aiming for that distribution column to try to make it as even as possible across all nodes, or can you have one be heavier than the other? What's best for performance?
So again, you try to choose the distribution column if you are trying to make it even. It makes your life but in real life the data is not going to be even. There'll be some with more data on them, there'll be some with less data on them. So that's when you try to isolate that. You actually assign a node for that particular shard ID, and then so that it can scale independently. But ideally you just try to choose the data with which is equally distributed, and you can use that.
Good to know. And then I'm sure this will be, it's out of the scope for this module, but there's some commands you can probably run to figure out what your distribution kind of looks like across all your nodes, so you can figure out if you need to change your distribution key.
Yes.
So, okay.
All right. Now the next step is actually creating the distributed tables, and as I said, choosing the right key. And for this, we are trying to distribute both the payment users and payment events, and we are choosing the distribution column as user ID. That makes sense, right? You're trying to distribute based on your user base, and then as and when you scale, you can scale up based on any particular shard.
Okay. And because I'm guessing here, right, is that because user ID is part of both distribution keys, that will reduce the need to do cross joining across nodes later on down the road. Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Now, the next step is creating a reference table. So there might be tables where you actually need to reference, especially when you're trying to get the merchant name based on the merchant ID. So we have a payment merchants table, which we are going to make it as an reference table. Again, this reference table is present locally. So without the network overhead of requesting rows from another node, these are usually small tables and usually need to store data on relevant queries for running on any worker nodes, especially when you try to get the names or information. Like, these are very usually small queries, and rather than again requesting this from another node and adding overhead, you generally try to create reference tables on every node. Again, for more information on distribution tables and columns, please refer to previous Learn Live sessions. They've been dealt in detail. Okay.
Gotcha. And I believe there's also guidance around how, we said small, but what is small depending on your application, right? So there's guidance in the docs that tell us what small is for a reference table.
Yes. Great point. Now I have created the tables. Now let's try to add some user data into the tables. Okay, let's paste this. Okay. All right. I got the data in, and let's see if the data is actually in the table. Yes, I see with over 126,000 records for my payment events. Now, let's see how the data is actually distributed in that. Let's see.
Hey, and by the way, occasionally Harry will make a mistake on purpose just to show you what would happen if you do make a mistake. Hasn't done it yet, but just
on purpose.
If you can catch us, that's bonus points, right?
Yeah, definitely. Anyone catch us, you're going to get some so many imaginary stars. Yep. All right. Now let's take a detailed look at your distributed tables. Now you can see all the distributed tables in this Citus underscore tables table, and you can see the three. Let me actually quit the extended mode, and let me run this again. Okay, you should be able to see the tables which we have created: the payment users, the payment merchants, the payment events, and the payment merchants. Of these, the two distributed tables are payment events and payment users. And you can see the distribution column. the user ID. Again, we also have one more table, that's the payment merchants, and that's a reference table. And once again, for more information for distributed and reference tables, please refer to previous Learn Live sessions. They have been dealt in detail. And you can see the table sizes and the shard counts.
Okay, so a couple things I'm noticing here, right, is that if we said the payment merchants is not a distributed table, it's a reference table.
Yes.
So when we look at the distribution column data for that row, it's none because it's a reference table.
Reference table.
And the other thing I'm noticing is that we're selecting this information from a table called Citus tables.
Yes.
And so I imagine that's only available if you have the Citus extension enabled. So,
yes.
Okay.
And now that we have that, let's actually go take a look at the actual shards, how the users and the events have been distributed with the shards. Now, this is actually how you can take a look at how your table is, how the data in that particular table is being distributed. You can see what is the real ID, the shard ID, the shard storage, and based on that, you can have information on actually creating a multi-node distributed database.
Cool.
And that should give us an end for this particular Learn Live session. And this particular, sorry, my bad, this particular exercise, there's still a lot to go. And you actually created a table, you actually loaded the data, and you distributed the table, and you can see the shards, and you have actually created a multi-node distributed table for these payment users for Woodgrow Bank. All right, that should bring us into this particular exercise.
Great. So we did a lot in the exercise, right? We were able to create some tables, have a distribution keys for distributed tables and a reference table. We were able to load data into it and query the metadata around it. So we've done quite a lot of work, and we're just in the first exercise. So man, we're doing good here.
We actually created a multi-node Citus.
That's true. Yeah, we did that too.
So yeah, you guys are almost in. Like you guys know everything about distributed tables. Then let's see.
All right, let's go on to let's move on and talk about how we turn on extensions within Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL, and that just rolls off the tongue. After you say it enough, it does. It is. But Woodgrow Bank requested that extra capabilities be added to their database. If you recall, we were saying, hey, it'd be great to add the geospatial reference data to the payment information, so we know we can gather more insights into how our customers are using that payment app. And also, there was a request to be able to load data on a regular basis into the database with some other data that they're getting from other places. And so that is going to require 2 additional extensions that we need to use. And some extensions are pre-installed. Some other ones you need to activate, if you will. We'll talk more about that. But the Postgres one, the PostGIS is the one for the geospatial data, and pgcron. And if you're familiar with Linux and Unix, right, you know the word cron for cron jobs to help you schedule things. So I'm sure you have a couple more things to say about this, Harry.
Yeah. So again, for pgcron, again, imagine you try to schedule a job about how do you roll up this information on creating a report. You need to run it on a daily basis, or if you need to run it on a regular schedule. Again, rather than creating your own objects in the database, rather than creating your own script and functions, you can take advantage of pgcron. And in this case, Woodgrow Bank is going to take advantage of pgcron to schedule some of the jobs. We do have a small side note here, and let's see how this actually works on creating extensions. Let me see if I can. Come on. Oh, I need to go into the database. Okay. Let's see if I can. Let's see, what are the available extensions? So you can just say select star from PG available extensions. That's going to give you the list of all the extensions which have been installed in your database. Again, you can see I have already installed a few of these extensions, and you can also see the actual the version, the installed version if you need to, and a brief description about that particular extension.
Very cool. So this just shows what's available.
Yes.
So these aren't necessarily turned on. These are just the ones that we have made available with our database as a service offering. So there are many other extensions in the PostgreSQL community beyond what we see here, but these are the ones. These are actually more of the popular ones that we see out there being used in the community. So. Yeah. But these are ones that are available. If you see one, or if you don't see your favorite one, things change in Azure. It may appear at some point, and make that case for it to be included and why it's so important.
Yeah, and also you can most of the popular extensions, it comes pre-installed with Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL instance. Before you try to install any new supported extensions, it's a good idea to take a look at what's already been installed. Maybe it's already been done for you. Makes my life much easier rather than me taking a look at each extension manually and figuring out if it's available or not.
True. Now, yep, definitely.
Select star from PG extension gives me the actual extensions which have been installed.
Cool. And I said, because this is a database as a service offering, you cannot install ones that are not in this list. So it's because you don't have access to the underlying mechanics to actually do it. So it just want to make sure you understand that there's, but we provide lots of SLAs and high availability and DR. We provide a lot of other things for the database as a service offering that we have. And just like with any PaaS service, it's a balance that you strike to what you can do, what you can't do, and what is given for you, so you don't have to do it.
Absolutely. And one of the things coming to your point is we don't let you create extensions out of the box, because from a security standpoint, it's not safe to create your own extension. So let's say if you try to create an extension, the PostGIS, which is already there, if you try to add that, no, it says it's already there and you must be an owner for extension. So if sometimes you feel like you want to create an extension and be an owner for that extension, there is a way to do that. Rather than using the create extension command, there's a function call where you can use select create extension. That would give you the ownership of that particular extension rather than using the create extension command. You can just use select create _ extension for PostGIS. That should give you there. For today, we have already installed the PostGIS, but this is how you do it instead of using the create extension command.
Cool.
Now, let's see if you can alter the events so that we can add it. Now that we have already installed the PostGIS, now let's see if we can alter the table payment events to add location geometry data to that. Let's go and alter the table payment events. We are trying to add a column location geometry. And again, these are all open source data, so you can take a look at what exactly are these, and this is available online, especially on the Postgres. This is all open source data. Now we actually altered the columns. Now let's change updating the first event record for providing for the development team. Let's add that information. where we try to update the event for from the text, where we try to add a data point for there. So we updated one record. Now let's actually query that. Now you can see the actual event, so you can see where this payment has been made. So again, this is a very useful extension, especially when it comes to mapping your users, and it can be, as Rick was talking about in manufacturing field, it makes sense to see where your data is coming in, where the on a supply chain basis, where the actual event has taken place, so that you can actually have an at the end of the day have an analytic map of what's going on your supply chain to see if there is loss of data, loss of packet somewhere down the line. Rick, do you have any point on PostGIS? Some more use cases where you can
Yeah,
take.
yeah, the uses are near limitless, right? Where you can where the the geographic data just adds a lot of value, so you have additional insights over your data. So it's um, yeah, it's really something that if you haven't really explored yet, you need to.
Absolutely. Now, let us see if we can actually create some scheduled jobs and make some of the reporting much easier. Now we are trying to create a roll-up event. So we are trying to roll up events for every 60 minutes. And we try to, in a real-world scenario, begin and end times will be being passed on a function as a cron job. And we try to roll up the event so that we can get some information out of the data which comes in. Now we are creating a roll-up events table. We are trying to create an index, and we are trying to distribute that table. So this has been done in this script. Once we have that, now that we have already installed our extension, we are going to create a cron job. So for this, we are creating an events rollup. It raises the aggregating event data into a 60-minute rollup table where we get the events from based on the user ID, the event type, and from the payment events tab, from the payment events table. And based on the start time and the end time, we are going to group by user ID and event type. That's the function we are creating. Once we create that, now let's actually try to call that function. So you can see when we are calling the function, we are trying to give in the start time and the end time to create our rollups. This is usually passed from the application. There you go. We have actually created that. Now let's schedule that. So now cron.schedule. This is probably any Postgres admins there. This is probably one of the most used function where we try to schedule different uh, functions, in this case events, and where we try to get information out of that. Let's create that. Yeah. Now we try to create that. Now let's see if the jobs actually. So using this query, we are trying to get the top 10 users with the most events in our last hour. You can see the user who, based on the payments they have made in the last hour, what are the users and what is their frequency of purchases. So this kind of gives you an idea of how useful this feature is, how useful this extension is. Now let's see if we need to stop the job. Let's see what are the jobs which are running. Yes, we have a job which we just created, and we can try to unschedule it once we are done with the exercise. You can just say cron.unschedule, and you can choose the job ID. And in this case, the job ID is going to be four. I'm not wrong. Yep, you can see the job ID here 4, and we hit cron.unschedule, and we stop the job. Again, extensions, you can, one of the useful extension when you're trying to migrate is going to be pg dumps. So we do Woodbrack uses pg dump extension to actually get the data out or get data out when you're trying to migrate. Again, fortunately, when we try to use pg dump, what happens to these extensions? When you try to migrate, what happens to these extensions? uh, you should know you should never usually dump individual member objects to the extension. Instead, we use the create extension is also included in the dump. So this kind of vastly, makes your life simplifies the migration to a new extension version that might contain more or different objects. So when you try to use PG dumps, it also contains the create extension command so that your extension data is saved rather than again redoing the whole thing.
Good tip.
Yep, that should, before we go to the next about how do we actually get the data using Azure Storage extension.
Yep.
Let's see what, before we go there, let's see a brief overview of what is available as of June.
Yeah, and yeah, and if you've worked with Azure for any amount of time, you know that things change, and there's always something new, or if it wasn't something available yesterday, is available today or will be tomorrow, type of thing, and that's true with the extensions as well. So as of today, I've kind of categorized these, just kind of aggregated them so you can see how many data type extensions we have, full text search functions, etc. Um, so you can understand, how broadly we have adopted extensions. One other thing, just as a side note, is that the PG stat statements extension is preloaded, which gives you additional insights on your query performance, etc. And also, if you're going to do any type of DB link or foreign data wrappers, you're going to need to allow the Azure services access as well, or you may not be able to use those extensions effectively. So just a little precursor flag saying, hey, don't forget about this. So that's what else we got to talk about here.
The functions, types, and indexes. So this is kind of an ever-changing list, right, to your name. So Azure is actually invested in creating and adding more extensions as and when they're available on the open source community. And once Azure vets the secure, make sure there is nothing to trip up the customers and it's compliant, you're going to add the extensions. It's good to know.
Yeah, and remember, Microsoft is the largest contributor to the open source community. Always like to put that out there.
Yeah. And now, coming to one of the points about previously, what about Azure Storage extension? So we have our own extension to kind of get the data securely from cloud and make sure that's bulk loaded from CSV files from a private container from the storage account into the Wood bank. So that's going to be the next exercise. Again, Rick, do you have any thoughts about why do I need to use Azure Storage extension? Why can't I do it on my own? Why can't I just use copy, and then why can't I just get that information from different existing extensions?
Yeah. So I mean, so Azure Storage is secure, right? So you need to have a secure way to access that storage where you have your files, in this case, to be loaded into our PostgreSQL database. So if you don't have this extension activated, you're not going to be able to access the Azure Storage.
Yes, absolutely. That is vital, especially when you're handling sensitive data. In this case, the bank is handling sensitive data. It doesn't want to load random applications or random data, random information. It needs from a verified or vetted source and in a secure fashion. So that's where Azure Storage extension comes into play. Now, coming to the next exercise where we actually load the data using Azure Storage extension. Let's clear this for now. So as part of this exercise, you are going to create an extension called Azure Storage. And let's go back. So let's go back to our home screen. Let's create Azure Cosmos DB. And let's choose the database we have created recently. And let's connect to that database. All right. Let me extend this a little bit. Okay. And again, this is the next exercise where we are trying to load the data from a secure source. In this case, I mistyped the password. Like Rick said, this is an occasional mistakes or
That's right.
unintentional mistakes. And now let's the extension, the Azure Storage extension, based on the steps, let's see if that has already been installed. Yes. For now, we have already installed, but you can use the select create extension Azure Storage to add that
Can you
extension.
scroll your screen up a little bit?
Sure.
There you go. Yeah, because it was hidden behind our pictures.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay. Now we're to the side. All right.
Thanks, Lauren. Now, you need to make sure that you have added and migrated the files to an Azure Storage account. That's the step one. And there's a link for that in the exercise. Make sure you follow that. So you should be having your storage accounts, and you should be having a container. In this case, my container is historical data, and it has those two files, events and users. So all of this has to be done prior to this exercise, and there's a link which you can follow about creating these particular steps or making sure that you are at this stage. So again, just to repeat, for this lab, we have a storage account, and which is private, and we created a container in that storage account, and we have added events and users data, so which we are trying to bulk load into our Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL instance. My God, it flows on the mouth, mouthful. I need to come up with some better names.
Just rolls right off the tongue, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's make sure that we have access to this storage account using this command. Let's see. Here we are going to add the storage account name and the storage account access key. So if you go back to your container, so my storage account name is going to be Cosmos for Postgres 1, and the access key, you can get that information. Again, choose the access key here. So this basically gives a secure way for your account to access the data which is present in the storage containers. So again, the best way or the ideal way is going to keep rotating your keys. There are some best practice on security wise. We can share that later, or you can just follow up on, there is a link in the exercise. Once we add that information, you should be able to see all the accounts added, and you should be able to list the data in that particular account. Let's see if I have that command somewhere. Okay, let's see. Okay. Again, in the labs, the account name is stlearn PostgreSQL. I have already created an account Cosmos 1 for Postgres. So this is again based on whatever storage account you have created. You can make sure that you use that particular name and the container name. So once I query that, I can see the two events and users directly from my database. So these are the, let's go to my containers, historical data. You can see the two events and users. I'm able to see those things directly when I try to query using the extension functions. Now, I try to bulk load this information using a simple copy statement. So the point behind the exercise is to bulk load, especially when you try to migrate or when you start using this distributed database. You're going to have data from disparate data sources or from different kinds of sources. So you try to load all this information into your database. And one of the best and secure way to do is using Azure Storage extension. And with a simple copy command, I can get that information from payment users from this particular location. So this is going to be, I need to change this a bit, real bit. Best you learn from PostgreSQL, that's going to be Cosmos one, based on the name of my storage account. All right.
Yep, and just another little tidbit to look out for here is if to make sure that that HTTP string is correct, so that
Yes,
it will access the right data, and you won't get an error.
absolutely. Again, to kind of give you guys an rough heads up, we created a storage account, and based on the storage account, in this case, you can go ahead, say create. Just to recap the steps, the account name is going to be based on the lab. We're going to create something called as learn PostgreSQL. I'm just trying to repeat the steps so that we don't miss any. And then once you create this, you can go to the containers where you create a private container. And for today's lab, it's going to be historical data. Again, these steps have already been done. And you can try to load the data either using a simple drop down, and the exercise has an using a curl command. Once you have that information, you try to create the extension. You try to add that storage account with the access key to your PostgreSQL instance. Once you have that, you try to load using a simple copy command. I already copied one of these files. And let's see. The next step is going to be, let's create an let's see how many users are actually in. So I used a simple copy command and to get this all the information from the CSV in the users into my payment users table. So you can see it's basically a 3 steps where I keep talking about multiple steps. It's pretty straightforward. You create a storage account, you add the information or add the data into one of those containers, you add that account information to your database, and use a simple copy command to get that information from that particular URL. Make sure the URL is correct, it's HTTPS, and make sure there are no gaps and spaces, and use a simple copy command. You can get that CSV data into your data. Now you can see the count. We have over 264,000 records. Again, that should bring us up to the end of loading data from using Azure Storage extension. And again, don't forget to delete your resources. So once you go back to your Azure container after the lab's done, let's close this. Don't forget to delete the resource, go to the resource group, and make sure you delete all the resources associated with for today's lab.
Yeah, great point to clean up after yourself so you don't let things running that's not being used. It's it's good for everybody. So
yep. It's best practices. Always clean up after yourself.
That's right. That's right. Best practice. So we have done quite a lot in today's Learn Live lab, right? We've
Yes.
we created Cosmos database with distributed and reference tables, load some data in. We added PostGIS extension so we can do geospatial data, and we got cron jobs, and now we were to copy data from our Azure Storage account into the database. Wow, we did quite a lot today. So
yes.
So hopefully you've been able to follow along, and perhaps you've even learned a thing or two. Maybe we should venture to find out.
Let's see if you can.
So we have our knowledge check.
We do have quizzes for today's session.
That's right. That's right. So let's go ahead and look at our first
question.
So let's walk through this together. That is, the PG Azure Storage extension provides many capabilities for working with data in an Azure Blob Storage account. Which of the following functionality is not available through the extension? Is it A, export table data to a blob? Is it B, list the files in a blob storage container? Or is it C, import file data directly into a table using the copy command? So,
That's some tricky wording in the question. The
yeah,
functionality.
it is. It is. So, well, I'm just thinking through because you were doing the work, so you probably know this, but I wasn't doing. I was watching you do the work, right? So that's so I remember that you did list out the files in the blob storage container. So I know it's not B,
Yeah.
and I know you used the copy command. So I don't think it's C. So I think it has to be A.
Yes. Based on the
So
option of
how did
elimination.
everybody do? All right.
Let's see. Oh, we do get some votes
Yeah, we got some votes.
coming in, and you
Yep.
can choose the link to where you can vote the vote at.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So you can go to the polls and see if you're right on guessing the correct answer here. Right now, it looks like everybody who has voted has the correct answer. So good job.
100%
Right.
correct answers.
Yeah. So and the answer was going to the next slide was A. Okay.
Let's go to
Question number 2. All right. One of Woodgrove Bank's developers created a new distributed table named User Actions, but it is unavailable to answer questions, but he is unavailable to answer any questions about it. Which query will provide you with the details about the table and its distribution columns? Is it A, select star from PG tables? Is it B, /DT? Or is it C, select star from Citus tables? Okay.
Remember this, we did this at the start of the lab. So
Yeah. So I know that if it was just /DT, you would have copied and pasted because that's too easy, right? So I know it's not that one.
and
So go ahead.
it is between PG tables and Citus tables. So again, this is Cosmos DB, which is based on Citus extensions. Maybe I'm thinking it is from Citus tables.
I think. Yep. I'm going to go with C. Let's see. Go ahead and lock in your votes, people, and we'll see how everyone did here. And
we got some shy audience today.
Yeah, I know. But
it
is C. Yes. Okay.
The Citus is where you can see the distribution list. Again, that's one of the important tables to know what's going on. How did you distribute the tables? What are the reference tables? What's the distribution column? And you can get that information from Citus tables.
Yep. And like Harry said, there's lots of clues in some of the answers into what we're seeing here, right? So that makes sense. All right. Let's go to
the next
question number 3. And that is, Woodgrove Bank has requested that to add a new extension to their Azure Cosmos database for PostgreSQL database. Which query should be run to confirm that the requested extension is supported and view the most up-to-date list of supported extensions? Is it A, select star from PG extensions? Or is it B, select star from PG available extensions? Or /DX? I'm gonna say it's not DX because again, you're copying and pasting lots of stuff. I think /DX is not something you would mess up. So I'm eliminating C.
Yes. Now it's going to be A and B. So again, let's go back to the question. So someone has requested a new extension. So the question is to check if the extension has been installed or if to check if the extension is available. Now, that should give us a clue about what's the command we need to run.
Yep.
What do you think, Rick?
I think it has to be B.
Yes. Let's go check the
There we go.
answer. Let's give it a minute for our audience.
Just give it a moment, but I don't see any activity on here. We got some shy people, maybe people who don't know how to use their phone, their mobile phone to get to the poll. I don't know. But anyway, but we had fun. We had fun here. So let's go on and see. Yes, we were right.
It is B. So again, to reiterate, to see if the extension has been installed, you go to PG extension. To see if that extension is supported or if it's available, you go to PG available extensions.
Okay. Yep. It makes sense. All right. Let's I think it's time to wrap this baby up. So just to summarize what we did, we had a case study where we helped a customer basically migrate into Azure using Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. I have to say that one more time. And extend the functionality of Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL with more extensions. So that's what we did today. And again, Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL relies, the foundation of it is Citus, which is an extension.
Which in itself is an extension. And we have used we have taken a look at why use extensions, what are the available extensions. We try to play around with installing a couple of extensions with PostGIS and the PG cron to schedule jobs. And using those extensions, we try to add some geometric data, we try to schedule jobs. And once that's done, we try to actually bulk load data using Azure Storage extension. Once we have that, that should give us a good idea about actually using extensions. I believe you have a prop, Rick. I thought you're going to show the prop about the session today.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did bring my own extension.
Yes, the extension.
Unfortunately, this does not go into Cosmos DB. So anyway, but just trying to bring some lightheartedness to the learning, because if you have fun when you learn, you seem to learn it much better. And we do have some cleanup steps. Harry, do you want to go over those real quick?
Sure. Let's go. I was showing it already in the previous slide, so you can go into your container. Let's go back to your Cosmos DB. You can select the resource group on which you have created all the resources and delete resource group. Make sure you copy the resource group to be deleted and paste that information and hit delete. That should clean up all the resources associated for today's lab. Yeah. Let's go back to our slides.
And just another thought here. This is something I always like to add especially when talking about something like this offering here, and that is, if you already are a PostgreSQL developer, and then you start using it in Azure Cosmos Database for PostgreSQL, you can now add Cosmos Database as another skill on your resume.
Yep.
So another reason to keep learning live with Harry and me and the host of other insiders here at Microsoft. So what else what's on our next slide we need to talk about?
The resources, where you can find more resources. And finally, we do have a small break before we go to, or we have summer holidays coming up before we go to the next sessions.
That's right. School's out for summer.
Yeah, so out for the summer.
So there's no excuse not to do this episode and the previous two episodes before August when we come back, right? So we're ready to hope to see you in August and have a great summer. I'm Rick Higas. Thank you for joining us today. Harry?
I'm Hari Bodiluri. It was a pleasure for me to speak with y'all, and thank you for joining us today.
All right. Thanks. It was fun.